Hello, everybody, and welcome back. So glad to have you with us here today. Today, I want to talk to you about the Ten Commandments and some ways that John Calvin helps us think about the usefulness of the Ten Commandments. One of the things that he has to say about the Ten Commandments is that it helps show us that we are not as righteous as we think we are. It actually shows us that we fall far short of what God expects of us. And that's good because it's true. It's good for us to see that. And so one good usefulness of the law and these Ten Commandments is to show us just how much we need God's mercy. The next thing that he wants us to see is that God's intent for us in the Ten Commandments is not just for us to do righteous things. He wants us to do righteous things, but he wants us to love righteousness and hate wickedness. And that's a bigger step. It's a step that really puts it well beyond what we feel like we could do. Many people can try to do the right thing, even though they don't particularly want to do the right thing. Sometimes they want to do the wrong thing. But to be brought to the point where you not only try to do right things, but you hate wrong things, that takes a work of God's Spirit. And again, this is why the Ten Commandments are helpful to us, because they help show us that what we need, we cannot produce in ourselves. We need God's help. The third thing Calvin wants us to see is that God cares about our heart. He doesn't just want outward appearance or to appear to do the right thing. He wants us to do the right things from the heart. And therefore, God cares about our heart. He can judge our heart. He knows our heart. And he wants us to obey him from the heart. The fourth thing that Calvin talks about is that, for instance, when it comes to stealing, God doesn't just want us to not steal. He wants us to be content with what we have. And so again, this gets to the heart of the matter again. It's not just you don't be the sort of person who won't steal even though you want to, but rather you don't want to steal because you know that your good God has given you exactly what you need, and you have been brought by his help to be content with what he has given you. And the idea that you would then try to steal to get more than God has given you would be something you wouldn't want to do because you have been brought by his help, again, to be content. And this, again, speaks of God's work in our heart and the way that the law helps show us that we need God. We need to rely on him. The fifth thing that Calvin wants to show us is that it's not just enough to not do the wrong thing. For instance, in the case of stealing, it's not enough just to not steal, that these commandments also have call us to not only not do the bad thing, but to positively pursue the opposite. So in the case of not stealing, I should not only not steal, I should actually work for your good. And that's completely different. It takes it in an entirely different direction. I don't just try to not take things from you. I am working for your good. I am here for you. I'm loving you. And so this is a way that helps us understand that the commands are not sort of a basic don't do these things, but rather also we should be the sort of people who want to do the exact opposite of what the commands forbid. We should pursue the good that is the opposite of breaking the commandments. The sixth and last thing I want to share with you, an insight from reading Calvin here on the Ten Commandments, is the way that I think he makes us wish that we kept the commands better. Even just the way that he talks about the Sabbath, for instance. It makes us wish that we kept the Sabbath better. He speaks about the fact that not only are we supposed to rest from our labor, but we rest from our labor so that the Lord will work in us. And when I think about that, I think, yes, I would love for the Lord to work in me. I would love for the Lord to work in me the grace and the kind of change in my life that I desperately need. I know that I need change in my life, and I know that God wants me to set aside a day for me to cease everything else and to look to him to work in me. And oh, how I want him to work in me. I want to meet with his people. I want to meet with God's people as he's commanded me to. I want to hear the word. I want to partake of the ordinances, and I want to pray with God's people, so I want to be with God's people. But even when I'm not with God's people, I want God to be working in me. I want him to be showing his grace to me and conforming me into the image of Jesus Christ. I want him to help me have sweet thoughts on what it is to rest one day out of 7 and help that turn my attention to Christ, who is my Sabbath rest, and have that even turn my attention from Christ, who is my Sabbath rest, as he died for me on the cross, and I'm united to him by faith, but I look forward to the day in which I will rest with him forever in heaven. And so I want to think about what God is for me and what God has done for me and what God has in store for me in the future. And I just need time to reflect on what God has done so that God will do his work in me. And I want to stop from striving after so many other things. And I want to observe a day of rest, a day of focusing on the Lord, because I want the Lord to work in me. And so I think Calvin helps us think not just don't do the Sabbath, because if you don't do the Sabbath or if you don't keep the commandments, bad things will happen to you. And he turns it around so that we don't just try to avoid God punishing us if we're not good, but rather we see that if we walk in God's ways, we will have a richer, more wonderful walk with him, and it's a thing that we should long to keep his commandments and long to have his work in us. And in this way, I think Calvin helps us think more positively about the law of God.